hire for 1 GH, that's a multi-DB, as a Simon Coswayasa. Aha, na oba obohu na waten sema hodo a ekoso Ghana fi se ha na chinchin na niema eho den se obete no ekofa ba ni aso ne so ne dia bro na so nya kwanya yede ati bi no hu de ekoso Ghana to subscribe ya bomodi aso be subscribe my we are no like no share ma nya so yede inside ke so already en feeling chim ni en kan de one chairman Ẓimaṱo Rawlings ababonten single-handedly handle just aka akofado ne afenyo marking Bawumia na po akomu nyina no atum at once na nsema yenua bei de to abonten no nsema ano hye pa o chese otwa no chese nkofo mu twantrosa afenyo marking tini sori and NDC form pay a Fɪṛes no abekan bam abekokran fa bill number wakana no atum at once akofado ene Bawumia so sorry a atronko ano medi o chese omo ndwen Ghana for omo Ghana youth stranded omo Ghana youth campo omo future nyina say omo nya omo future campo adwane mahama chese wetima ka akofado ano atumpa enyas gotwa yebeka kwetini nsem na obekye se de nani gye won se in future person be flag bearer and na say running mate camp na person baby that na yet say we see advertise and as we see a turn 24 hours economy no and so the better transform.
What one word best describes the handlers of this economy from you?
Reckless.
Right, so what does it say?
If you're called upon in the future to lead the NDC as flag bearer or running mate, will you accept it or not?
Correct. Will you?
It's a call to duty. I would accept. It's a call to duty. For me, the issue of a position of responsibility is not about the privileges and the perks. It's about what can you do, to actually support,
right,
to serve. And if you're being called upon to do something of such, magnitude, it means that there's something that you're doing that people feel that you could actually make a contribution to. And I believe that from the point of view of call to service,
you
have a high, well, yes. I think you're suddenly taken away from I am thinking about it to you've been asked to. Now you must decide, will you serve or will you not?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the near future, President Ẓimaṱo Rawlings or Vice President Ẓimaṱo. Are you happy with the state of the Ghanaian economy today?
I don't think anyone is. I certainly am not, but I don't think anyone can actually hold their head up in all truth and say that we're fine, because we're far from fine.
We are far from fine.
No, we're not in a good space. We're not in a good space. When you default on loan repayments, you know you're not doing well. And there again, this is where I keep coming back to the issue about the fact that this generation of young people has been let down, because you're not even leaving them with a legacy that they can build on, or even at the, there's a risk of them squandering something. There's nothing for them to even squander, because they're being left with a burden that's not caused by them, which means that in addition to trying to make it, they're having to pay for the sins of their forebears.
Do you fear for their future?
For all of our futures. For all of our futures. If we are not going to stop this playing around in terms of the politics and understand that there is a direct relationship between what we do or we don't do in the political space and how it impacts people's lives. You see, I think that a certain level of there's almost a kind of a buffer that people are creating around themselves when it comes to politics, and it's like, oh well, this is just political talk. Well, you know what? We should start being responsible for what we say politically.
And this regardless of which party. You're not saying whether NPP or NDC, it's the politics.
We should all just start being responsible in terms of our utterances politically, because it has a direct impact on what happens to the people's daily lives. You're
saying you're not happy with the economy as it is today. Will the NDC, granted, if given the chance, would you do anything different?
I believe we will. I mean,
really?
Yes.
So it's not about
if
world happenings and then, like, you know, I just read yesterday the president saying that we're coming out of the woods. Things are getting better now. So look, they said they are going to bring back the economy. So it's just a matter of time. So maybe things happened. Would the NDC done anything different?
To be very honest, I don't think I'd be sitting here as a representative of the NDC wanting to run for another term if I did not believe that my party had something better to offer this country. You know, I think that we've always had a record of better performance in terms of, you know, interventions, social interventions. Perhaps enough about speaking about what we've done.
The NPP would disagree. Just yesterday, I heard Miracles Abuaje saying that when it comes to track record and all of that, and even the vice president has intimated that the NPP are better managers of the economy than the NDC.
And it's COVID and Ukraine that have put us in this mess.
What makes you better than the NPP? Two things of the NDC that you put on the spot and say, look, hand to chest, we are better than the NPP.
Well, here's what I'll tell you. For one thing, the NHIS that people keep attributing to the NPP was actually the brainchild of the NDC. It was actually piloted during the PNDC. So I think that, like I said, that's why I think that perhaps as the NDC, we're not marketing ourselves well enough and speaking about what we've achieved well enough. I believe that it was through PNDC into the NDC and that we actually saw the expansion of the electricity in this country.
Yeah, the rural electrification project.
Yes, and those are things that have added to the standard of living of people, because you see, you can keep throwing money at random things, but it's when there's a concerted effort towards doing something that, you know, if I can provide electricity to this community, it provides them with the means to do A, B, C, D, rather than trying to do the little drops of water here and there. So those types of things are what we're talking about. You asked.
Yes, but yes, too. But social interventions, yes. But the NPP will say, look, from where we stand, we've even come in to do a lot more social interventions than the NDC. They talk about, yes, the bus, the transportation system, going out there with poverty alleviation and all of that, which naturally people will feel the NDC should have done that.
Well, you know, the other thing as well is a lot of the projects that the NPP has commissioned were actually started under the NDC. And a lot of contracts that we've seen coming to fruition under the NPP were actually originally signed under the NDC.
Fɪṛes is not your idea or baby.
You know, the plan was to do something progressive. We still have a lot of schools that were built under the NDC that are not being put to use. And unfortunately, as a result of not having the necessary infrastructure in place, you're now having to do a shift system for students. We've seen what's going on. Skyrocketing, you know, teenage pregnancy, for example. And you have this whole thing where now children who are in one area are now being expected to go and be day students in another region. And parents are still paying a lot. I know how much I'm having to contribute towards the so-called free SHS. The idea was to progressively become free, which means that you don't run ahead of yourself. So it's not that the NDC is against a concept of free education.
The NDC is not against
that
free
is not
SHS.
it. But we'd actually gotten to a point where every child was going to school at the same time. And now you have children going to school in shifts.
But they're saying that we have volumes, we have numbers, we have a lot more people.
But if you say that you want to increase the number of people who go from Accra to Kasoa every day, shouldn't you think about, for example, expanding the road? Which, by the way, that road over there, that was a project that was started under NDC, you know, since you're asking about that, for example. And so if you're going to do something, you must lay the structures in place in order to make sure that what you're going to implement will succeed and you don't create another problem because you're solving one.
But Honorable, isn't it one Ghana? So you have the schools that were started by the NDC. What stops the NDC from pushing to say, look, one country, one Ghana, so these schools shouldn't be abandoned?
Oh, but that's been a narrative.
Exactly.
We've all been talking about it. I mean, the Manchataki school, next to that was a Millennium School that had been abandoned after the NDC left power. And it was only when this was now happening on the Manchataki where the Mormon Church in collaboration with the Gamanche were doing this, and then pressure being put for the Millennium School to be completed, is when we finally saw the completion. And it was moving a little bit slowly, and I had to actually add my voice to that. Point being, this is one country. Taxpayers' money is being used for things. We should not be seeing this situation where because one party has left office and another party has come in, projects are left to rot. Because that is actually, a cost.
Are
to the
you happy
state.
that they've taken up the Saglame housing project? Started under the NDC. Yes. Now the Minister for Works and Housing has moved in. There's some considerable work being done. Tender is out and all of that. Are you happy? At least there's some level of, continuation and consistency.
For me, the issue of housing, yes, I'm happy about that because.
Itebusia for Ẓiнаtor and a etin can watch a change Semuji. Who say atro ni niema air course of parliament a finyo marking a down on what can I not simple atro ni niema air course or NPP or dream one tiasi simple pumping for Mosoria Muji Dim Kwana Modrion Muji Ghanaian taxes and no say no more fine near me here. I just watch a chenimum who say these people are more the diano or Muyanko for more dream Pama air Ghana for. Ṛeĉkleṣṣ because as we speak Ghana economy just say I say am Ghana youth for any future I'm nyina ye de edwane ama sabre with my expose me pa enya senketo it kakra fa or chest or person be flag brand so no it kakra so ye the F no wie no ye be kwa kwatie si do si cheche 24 hours economy no si aton akona kono pa enya senketo or put my hammer on a high place I just say. There's no way I'm hammer in we need air this 2024 election. Some year airs now to it's a ton 24 hours economy no. Yenko tine hwede okaka ho.
You but just before the break, thoughts on the 24-hour economy by your party?
All right. The 24-hour economy is something that could actually be an absolute game changer. Of course, it has to be on a bedrock of certain things that are functioning. We need to make sure the institutions are working properly. We need to make sure that the cost of utilities is within an affordable range so that people can afford to stay open 24/7. We also make sure that our workforce is properly trained, so that you can have the right number of people who can do the shift system. So it incorporates everything from energy, dependable, power production to energy, to proper education, which, well, so what to be said for that. But anyway, but so yes,
as it stands now, is it doable? Is it feasible?
I believe on some levels we can definitely start right away. And there are certain corrective measures that once we put in place will actually make it even more so. But bear in mind, there are some things that are already operating in that way.
24 hours. So it's,
in a hospital, for example.
So we have a 24-hour economy now as it stands?
No, we don't have a 24-hour economy
but
as
some
it
things...
stands. There are certain aspects that we all know run through that kind of a shift system for the sake of, protection of life, for example, in a hospital, for example. But if you have the 24-hour economy, for example, operating in an optimal sense, then you don't have a situation where you go into the hospital at a certain time and the consultants aren't there. Because if you go after a certain time, you find that it's just a small, like a skeleton staff that's working. And when there's an issue, that's when you have people coming in, as an emergency or whatever. But when you have a setting, I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
When you have a setting where you have this really tied down properly, then you don't have a situation where it's only in the daytime that you have the chance to see a consultant throughout that kind of situation.
Interesting. Give us 5 landmarks, things that you've done, landmark achievements that you can hit your chest and say, look, I've done this, and go out there, Bola, it's there for you to see.
Okay. Well, first of all, members of parliament are not to do things. However,
outside of the world of politics.
Exactly, you can't get away from it. If you go to Asylum Down, there's a pedestrian bridge that commuters use, which used to be in a really bad state. It was this, if you didn't know how to say Psalm 23, you would have to learn it for that bridge. I'm telling you, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death as you're walking, because it was actually a death trap. Wow. But we had all the students from Accra High who had to cross to the other side, had to use that particular bridge. And so I just thought, this is something that has to be addressed, because as part of engagement in interacting with the constituency, it was one of the complaints that they had, and for years it had been in that state. And so we have a pedestrian bridge, beautiful bridge, if I do say so myself. And it's,
we'll go and check it out as part of our fact show.
Please. as well, the Sahara Park. There's one bridge, a escape route whenever there's flooding in that area, which was also destroyed during one of the heavy rains. And now, I think it was just a few months ago that we had that built as well. So that's also...
You're a woman of bridges.
Interesting point, actually, because the other bridge as well, on the ring road.
Okay.
Yes. I hadn't thought about that. That's a very good one. I like that.
Right.
So that, for example, and then just providing furniture, the basic schools, you know, because you would think that the issue of children not having suitable chairs to sit on and tables to write on is only outside of Accra, but it's very much a situation here, and a lot of the schools have a huge deficit when it comes to furniture for the children. And so if you go to most of the basic schools, you'll see furniture that I've actually provided the schools with.
Earlier, you mentioned, you know, I know you've given us 3 bridges, yes, and then you mentioned the school, yes, maybe in light of education. What about health? I was thinking that was going to be the pillar of it. Anything that you've done in terms of maybe health?
Well, that's why I keep talking about the health screening, because it's not something that is concrete, physical that you can say it's still there, but it's actually something that impacts so many lives. So that is what we do. But if you go to the Osu Maternity Hospital, at least 3 of the medical equipment that they have there, including the UV machine for babies who are born with jaundice, I provided them with that, and we have the electrophoresis machine, which is important for, you know, doing blood tests as well. That was also provided by myself, which is, you know, when a woman goes for an antenatal check and the doctor does everything, there's a little, you know, probe to hear the baby's the sound of the heartbeat, the fetal heartbeat, and we provided those as well. You know, and then beds, you know, we provided some beds to the Tema Station Clinic, which a lot of the headquarters in Tema Station avail, you know, make use of that place as well, provided.
Interview for as naturalist na chechen semu ameyo hu say this government any adwin pa Ghana for this government and it more ding nyemo your government ni bin sida ni ye bon price bi so insida na government just so smarter ma na so no onko baby a wa say bi every sector bia no untimi point ni me ba ko me ni cry the oye or kind sem kakra why you on the constituency no ye say on kan yama 5 why in the constituency wa ka broso onunko as oba onunko ampo a say enye na aban in AD Ghana so no utima lobby nsema ebos ordinary ni boto musika ye nyama bebre emo manfo no at least ekushi omo kakra enye this government ni mo for all the taxes, all the resources, everything ekomo now so enye just omon dan dwen ho krampo da say bia we dey it's time to yembo omo kakra debi and uti ne sema work and ochichemu ya omeye ho say eye project ahodo a beba na oma abandon no forgetting say is the same taxpayers' money and building that project in infrastructure. No, normal say use another taxpayers' money. I build it for free. And complete me that taxpayers' money now. I complete that taxpayers' money now. A project no. And kebe bomb no. Imagine and they say they are building a political party. They are not building Ghana. Anything they are about to do sabri. No, they are for your mark and they want to know just say. If Ṛeĉkleṣṣ, they are not against Ṛeĉkleṣṣ. Omona etutu in like a trogum from amaman for say omaninjo. Now so as we speak in a day, they are the people who promote because they were building infrastructures. Sabri as we speak now, omo claim some of their they are using their infrastructure. So they are mom peninsula. Kede na kamu use some infrastructure. So it's not a breaking in madam who say. This government and 3 more DA pa. And if you say the comment section or there, subscribe, share, subscribe, you know, like, for your Akroma.